Hello, everybody. Drasco here from 10knorm.com, where my main mission is to help heart-centered entrepreneurs who know all the business strategies normalize their next 10K month, week, day, etc. And to do that by mastering what's between their ears. And for today's episodes, we have a real talk segment where I bring in a heart-centered entrepreneur who isn't seeing the consistent, stable growth in their business. And then live on the call, I get to help them break down one specific aspect that's most overlooked in business strategy, which is that of the inner aspect. And on today's episode, we have Dave Gold, who brings the full power and wisdom of his 45 years as a businessman, a trial lawyer, executive consultant, and spiritual mentor to liberate world-changing executives and entrepreneurs from the shackles of self-doubt and self-disqualification. So completely and utterly in tune with regards to what we do here. And Dave, I got to say, I think you are actually the oldest guest I've ever had on the podcast. So, it's always good to be number one. So I'm actually very excited to dive into this. And, if some of the wisdom rubs off on me as well, I'm totally okay with that. So first and foremost, thank you for being on the show. How are you doing today?
I'm great. I'm really glad that when I saw your profile, I just thought, oh, here's a brother. Here's a guy that gets it. So I'm always happy to find someone from my home planet, and I'm just also happy to connect with your following, your people.
100%. So I'm excited to dive into that. So you have this extensive experience. You like you said, you've been on the planet for a while. You've accumulated a lot of stories and experiences through that. So why don't you just kind of break it down for us, like, who are you? Why do you do what you do? How did you get to where you are right now? We'd love to kind of have the context of all that.
Okay. So first of all, I always try to answer a question like I've never heard it before, so it doesn't turn into a canned thing. So this will be a bit of a surprise to all of us. I'd say the latest iteration of my, and I'll turn 70 next month, and you mentioned I'm the oldest guest, and my mother said I had the energy of a child. So, and my wife will confer that often when I'm breaking things like a little kid. So, but I think my life has been, I think as many people's are, is how do I come to grips with my humanity? How do we come to grips with, if we're self-reflected, if we're heart-centered as a people, as your ecosystem is, heart-centered people are aware of their faults. They're aware of their faults, their shortcomings, what they're doing wrong. And they feel the cost and the consequences of those in terms of being impediments to love and abundance and authenticity and full expression. So I had that in me, like, what do I do with the fact that I can see all these things about myself that I don't want to carry into adulthood in my life? And my first iteration was I just figured I'd make so much money and be so famous, and my wife would just be so beautiful when I grew up that I wouldn't care if I was imperfect. It wouldn't matter. And then life shook me out of that with a series of traumas in my late teens. And my father died and a few other things happened, and that didn't work out. And then I decided on a different strategy. I tried I didn't try, I did the spiritual strategy. I worked, I moved to West Virginia, moved in with a crazy wisdom American Zen master. And while I was practicing law and building a law practice, I was also dynamically searching for the truth. I mean, I was celibate, I was an ascetic, I had a cabin in the woods. I'd spend I'd work like hell in my law practice 11 months. And then 1 month a year, I'd go out to my cabin and spend 30 days by myself, no electricity, no running water, not even a book. I would just, to face myself. So that was my strategy of trying to spiritually bypass my humanity. I figured I'll never fix myself. So let's just get enlightened, and then whatever, the ego will die and the bad parts of Dave Gold will die. But interestingly enough, I kind of had a dual destiny, because at the same time I'm building this law practice from nothing, and I'm building a very successful law practice, and I'm a good marketer, I'm a good business person. And I think I kind of also had a backdoor strategy that I would just continue to get, kind of a continuation of my childhood strategy. I would still get rich, and I was rich, successful and everything else. And that would kind of fix whatever problems I had. And then, as I note on my website, that about 7.5 years ago, at the age of 62, a love unimaginable descended upon me. And a love that I could never expected and would never have dreamed of. And with that, a number of things happened. First, I realized that life was trustworthy. And I talked a little bit about this off camera before we came on, that the universe, I could actually see and know and hold in my arms that the universe wanted what I wanted, except better than I can imagine. And that changed me around from being a self-starter. I got to get enlightened. I got to make money. I got to be somebody, to holy cow, I'm not in this thing alone in any sense of the word. Um, and then the other piece that came is I realized, in having to come to grips with the fact that I was loved in this way by this type, by Julie, by this phenomenal human being, that I couldn't be the imperfect, defective, hopeless person that I thought I was, that I was trying to overcome and transcend and bypass. And that started me, and really spent my journey the last 7 years of recognizing how our own self-doubt, our self-loathing, our self-sabotage, even our self-hatred is the biggest impediment to anything that we want, whether it's peace of mind, whether it's love, whether it's abundance in business, whether it's being an impactor. So that's where I find myself now. I have a number of different ways that I, manifest that in terms of, programs and working with individuals and working with companies. But it's always pretty much the same message of being able to bring my business acumen, because I've done a lot, and I'm have a very practical, grounded, realistic kind of a business sense, and helping companies and of heart, run by people with heart and with soul. And at the same time being able to kind of bring in and attune and attract kind of the higher wisdom and the higher perspective that really brings the magic into the world. So that's kind of I don't know. That's the first time I've given that particular story, but hopefully it hangs together and hasn't bored your listeners and your viewers.
That's okay. Like I said, this is it's one of many firsts, right? Like we have, the oldest guest is the first, you're number one there, right? You got the number one answer with regards to you never given it before. So I'm I'm actually totally okay with that. So what stood out to me when you were talking about your story, it seems that it was almost like there's just like two halves, right? Like the first one, there seems to be this dominant kind of push energy. I'm pushing to reach enlightenment. I'm pushing to build this law practice. I'm pushing to be so successful that the imperfections don't even matter anymore. And then kind of the second half that you've alluded to near the end is what I hear is more of like surrender, is more of trust, where it's like, hold on, like I'm not really just this entity by myself trying to fix my imperfection. There's actually something more working with me. And when I open up and allow myself to be there, then good things seem to happen. So was that sounds accurate to you?
Yeah, that's really astute and really well said. And also it's triggering something new in me as well. And I think that's one of the cool things of living from your heart is things are new. You don't have to go back and try to remember who the hell you are or what you're trying to say. You can, respond rather than just react. But I realized it wasn't like my life. You can't spend 30 days in a cabin by yourself and not trust. I mean, you're just the way you realize that you can't just force yourself to meditate. You can't force yourself to be at peace. You can't force yourself not to be afraid out in the woods at night. So the idea of I've done enough mystical work or spiritual work to know that there's grace and it's surrender, and I know all that. But I think that my being was so predominantly geared and wired for pushing that the trust was secondary. I was 51% pushing, 49% trust. And what happened when Julie came in my life is it became 51, this is all metaphorically speaking, but it became 51 and 49. And then at that point, and once your critical mass goes over to the trust, then things start to pick up. And, we talked about it, but still, what I still realize in myself, one of the things probably talk about during the period of your, coaching or whatever, kind of sharing wisdom from, is that there's residuals. And the fact that all these things happen, it doesn't mean that you're never going to worry, you're never going to fear, you're never going to mistrust, and you're never going to feel that life's not going to give you the next nickel.
Right, because at that point you've done it so many times that it's not anymore just like a faith or hope. Like you've seen that come to pass, so it's like I can actually trust it because I've done it so many times that even that part of me that might have initially doubted it, now it's on board because like the evidence is actually there. So is that kind of what you're talking about?
Again, really well said. And the advice that I had, the kind of the higher wisdom that I was told was, said, first trust Julie, then you learn to trust yourself, then you learn to trust life. So for me, I needed an embodiment. And then and from that embodiment, I realized, oh wow, to be the man who can love and be loved like this, I'm trustworthy, and then I trusted life. But then the next step, which was revealed, was your trust, and just exactly what you were saying. I'm just articulating it, I think, a little differently. Is the trust becomes a knowing. You actually know. You've done it enough times. You've done enough that now you know. And yeah, and that's a beautiful way to live.
Absolutely. And I think it's one that, I mean, certainly I've had flashes of that, and been able to see how the path has progressed when I surrender to that. It's certainly something that I've seen in clients, when they try something that they might not have tried before. So yeah, I'm 100% on board with that. So I'm curious then, with regards to like having this deep well of wisdom and having all these experiences, both, spiritual, practical, and personal, um, what is it that kind of brings you forward now, right? Like, as I understand it, you have a coaching business now, is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, I call it a transformational mentoring business, but yes, I have a coaching business. I work with companies and I work with groups of people. I work on kind of, and then if I may also, without getting off track, I just treat everyone who comes in my life as a gift. I don't care if it's the UPS guy or the Amazon, the clerk at the Walmart store, or someone who calls to sell me something. I may not want to sit on the phone for an hour. So there's a way that I don't want to call it my service or it's in everywhere. But yes, professionally, yes, I gave you a long answer to it. Yes, you're right. Go ahead.
Got it. Yeah, perfect. So then I'm curious with regards to where you're at now in your professional mentoring, right? Like the theme of, this podcast and kind of what I do is usually the people that come on, they have some sort of ceiling or plateau as far as their business is concerned. And more often than not, they've tried the business stuff, they know the business stuff. It's like, I've done enough of it, but for some reason it's not clicking to kind of go to the next level.
Mm.
And usually the problems lies where they're not looking, which is usually internally. So I'm curious that in your instance, as somebody who has spent a lot of time looking internally, what do you feel like is a potential thing that you're not addressing internally that could be causing the external, like, business plateaus?
So let me just reel back because it reminds me of a story which you said there that I think and it's interesting because I mentioned I used to have a podcast and then we would solve people's biggest business challenges, and then one of those people became a client, and I was doing my partner and I, my then partner and I, business partner and I, were doing a coaching session with him, and my partner, who was also quite, who was quite brilliant and savvy, kept giving him one brilliant idea after another, after another, after another, and he just had reasons not to do it. And finally, I said, "Justin, hang up the phone or get off the Zoom call." He got off the Zoom call, and I said, "You don't want it. You don't want success. I wouldn't give you all the great. We've given you 10 ways that you could 10 extra business, and you're not doing any of them. So why don't you and I stop and figure out why the hell you don't want to be successful? Why you're running with the brakes on, doing all this work and sabotaging yourself, and then we'll go back and figure that out." So I think that's just kind of aligning with that, and you and I are both very attuned, and I assume, I would bet, I know, I trust to the point of knowing that you're very adept at both deciphering what that block, what that obstacle is, why people, whatever's between the ears, and I would also say between the shoulder blades, in terms of in the heart, and figuring out what that is. But the answer to the question, if I got it, is like, what do I see in my own eating my own cooking? We have to eat our own cooking. That's all there is to it, man. You're not gonna take anybody higher than you can go yourself. And that's the beauty of what we do, is we're constantly being, pushed up as well as pulling others up, and rising together as friends. But what my path is, and continue to get deeper and deeper in terms of um, is, I would call it something my father called breaking the lineage, which is that, just being quite honorable. I mean, honest authentic, is that you can figure out I'm Jewish. And there's a lot of beauty that comes with that, and the heart and the wisdom. And I know the other day, my wife asked me for some advice, and I gave her some advice, and she got anxious. I don't want your brilliant Jewish mind. I want your beautiful Jewish heart, you know? So, um, there's a lot. I don't want to make it seem like, oh, poor me, you know, but with that, there's just 4,000 years of scarcity. There's 4,000 years of looking over your shoulder. There's 4,000 years of, you know, who survived? The people that could find danger that others couldn't. They could perceive, oh, the Cossacks are coming or whatever. You know, I don't make it seem victimized. I'm just talking about this diagnostically, not in any kind of judgment or victimization. I just made a study of this stuff. And so recognizing that I come from a lineage where distrust, being able to survive in scarcity, being, you know, just having a 360 all the time, and wondering where the next terrible thing is going to come from, and don't rest. That's been ingrained. That's why we made it for 4,000 years. And that's not the way I want to live. That's not what I'm coaching. That's not what I'm transmitting. So, and it's real. And me just knowing it, you know, me just knowing that's who I am and that's how I respond to life doesn't necessarily fix it. So for me, it's literally, and I'm talking daily, it is a daily way of me making choices, both internally and externally, that reflect my highest knowing, which is that life is trustworthy. And then the other piece, which you and I resonate with, which I have such great respect for you for both knowing and having the courage to bring it out, is that it's not hating myself because I can be neurotic, or because I'm worried about scarcity, or I'm pinching a nickel, or I'm, you know, not relaxed because I'm worried if the Cossacks are coming when I should just be, you know, hanging out with my daughter or something. You don't disqualify yourself for that. So there's a way that you and, you know, for what it's worth, and I'm getting the punchline here, is you can only love your way by. I tried fixing my way by bypass. The only way you get through this is you love your way through it, whatever that means. So anyway, the answer to what I'm doing now is still dealing with the day-to-day trust issues, the day-to-day abundance issues, and more surrender. And I got to tell you, and this, you know, if we can crack this code, you and I are really something. It's that I don't want to sell anymore. I've been selling my whole life. I was a trial lawyer. I sold juries. I had a sales company. We had salespeople on the $100 a day. I'd get on the phone with them side by side because I led from the front. I don't want to do $100 a day. I don't want to manipulate people. I don't want to beg anybody for anything, but I still got to build a business. So there's a really interesting edge right now of what does this look like for me to be smart and continue to build and grow in my impact and my abundance, my you know, my bank account abundance, at the same time that I'm not coming from a scarcity mentality that I'm trying to get people to do something they may not want to do, or I feel I need something from them. I don't want to need anything from anyone. I just don't want to do that. I just want to love and give them whatever there is to give. So that should give you something to work with. There's some meat, there's some red meat there for the lions.
There's definitely some red meat there. And okay, so just kind of, because there was a bunch of different things that came up there. So there was the lineage sentiment, right? So there are, you know, old energies, old expectations, histories, things that I know, things that I've grown up with, things that are working in the back of my head that seem to put friction in my love and trust of like what is actually happening, right? So that's like one element. You mentioned the whole aspect of the selling. Like, I don't want to continue this. I think it kind of sounds like the push energy, right? Like, I don't want to push to force or like manipulate people to buy stuff. Okay. And that kind of outwardly going forward element of growing my, like, this current business. And I think kind of the overall, and this is more implicit, so you correct me if I'm wrong here, kind of like the joy aspect, right? Like I want this growth to be fun, but I feel like there are these, not even blocks, but it's like these chains that are keeping it less than fun. Like I can't really move in a flowing fashion forward. So do those resonate with you?
Yes, and I think it's well summarized. And I would say the third one especially, there's something my father said: the energy that goes into a thing becomes a thing itself. And you know, from the people we work with, they figure I'm going to work like hell and then I'm going to retire and relax, or I'll be neurotic, you know, I'll be compulsive now, but then I won't be. And it doesn't work that way. You have to start from where you finish. So I want to make sure that the energy that I'm putting into this is an energy of love and trust, and not an energy of need and scarcity.
Got it. Okay. So then out of those three, which one do you think is most relevant for you in this moment?
In this moment with you, I just got scarcity, the scarcity mentality.
Okay, perfect. So then how is the scarcity showing up in your business specifically?
Um, okay, how is that showing? Okay, wow, that's a really good question. So let me give you the okay, cool. I'm trying to make things easy for you, and I should just, not
No,
worry
make
about it.
them real. If I
That's good.
can't
That's
solve
all.
it, then you know
That's why
what? That's on me.
I don't
That's
want to
not
lead you
you.
down some esoteric rat hole where you go, what the hell did I ask that guy on my show for? Okay, so let me get, so when I started, kind of found my voice and found what was most wanted to do, I was working with people, and I was helping people kind of get their hero's journey together. I was working with people in company. I just had all this different stuff that I knew I could do. And I thought, it's too confusing. It's breaking my brain. I'm just going to start coaching. I'm just going to start mentoring one-on-one. And one, it'll prove the concept. But the other is that I'll learn what it is that I do that I can scale. That's smart business advice. Gave it to not often. I give yourself advice. It's giving your clients, you actually take it. I used to say when I was a lawyer, my clients always did exactly what I told them to do, as long as I told them exactly what they wanted to hear. But in this case, okay, anyway, not to lose the plot. So I said, okay, right away, without even advertising, I just, people would come to my door. A guy that came to get the mice out of the crawl space, he was a client. Another guy put the basketball hoop in, he's a client. People were, oh, you're doing this. I said, I want 10 clients. Boom, I had 10 clients. That was great. And I was like, okay, this is fantastic. I got the I got the ass kicked out of it, as we used to say in West Virginia. And then suddenly they started, they graduate. And I thought, oh well, I'm losing my coaching clients, and I'm losing my coaching clients. And one by one, they started to drift. So I did the scarcity energy. Oh, let's find new ones. Let's go out and put. Oh, and it was wrong. The pushing was wrong. I didn't feel right. It wasn't working. I felt myself going back to old ones. And today, I just finished up with the last of that 10 client. We just had a last one. I said, oh, you're done. You graduated. So I could look at this like, oh my God, I don't have my coaching clients are all gone. But I know, so then I can have my attention on that, and I'm scarcity and I'm scrambling. Okay, I don't want to do that, but I can feel that urge. It's rising up in me. Oh my God, go! You got to replace that revenue. And then there's a part that says that I know that this is just because I've graduated, and now there's something new I'm going to do. And even reaching out to you with a podcast, it's like, oh, that's a way that I can just have my voice heard without selling anybody in particular. So it's like, how do I find these mechanisms? But anyway, I've given you enough. That's an example of not wanting to scramble to just bring people in, replace people, and yeah. So I don't know if that should give you something.
Okay. So in terms of that, because the original question was like, how is the scarcity showing up in your business? Right. So from my understanding of your response, it's I made this decision that I wanted to go into mentorship. I wanted to go into coaching. As soon as I made that decision, these people just started coming to me, right? Like just random conversations without expectations that I would have led to my initial batch of like the first 10 clients. Once that started to die down, then I was like, okay, well, I now need to make this happen. And you're kind of recognizing that as like what got me here isn't what's going to get me there. So
Exactly.
is that accurate before I go
Yeah,
on from there?
that's absolutely, as my father said, the light bends. You follow the light, it's going, and then it bends. The light's bent.
Got
But
it.
we,
Okay. So something needs to now change, something needs to now shift for you to actually go into the abundance that you want. Okay. So that's kind of interesting because, even let's just say, even from the metaphysical perspective, right? The initial acceptance of the next path kind of gives you the early wins, kind of like the beginner's luck of moving into alignment, right? It's like all these things were kind of just waiting for you to make this shift. You accepted it, and then suddenly it collapsed into your reality. Okay. But as you said, that's not necessarily like the initial shift to the kind of momentum forward, it's like two different things. So it's two different aspects of alignment, right? Even in terms of like the more 3D explanation of, what got me here isn't going to get me there. That was kind of lucky. Those were the conversations I was having. I was having it without any expectations, but now that's dried up with regards to the low hanging fruit in front of me. Now I need to go forward and do something. Okay. Both of those, however, are relatively, you know, there's many ways to interpret this, but are kind of action behavior oriented. Okay. You could be scarcity minded and those things could still happen, and you could be abundantly minded and the same scenario could have happened, meaning the early win can happen from whatever perspective, and you still need to shift in order to go to the next step. So then going back to the original question, then how do you think scarcity impacts the next step?
The scarcity impact, the next step. I can only respond and please, if you have to center me in the, get me in the center of the fairway again, do it. I think it comes from a scramble mentality versus an intuitive mentality of just, I'm going to hustle and throw a bunch of stuff and just run around and see what happens and do some magical thinking. So I think that's one way. And the other way, oh, I know, this is better. This is a little more palatable. I think it's not coming from need. It's not looking at people as something that I need from them. Okay. And this is tricky because, like you, I'm a great networker. I'm not just like network, like, oh, hey, meet him, he'll do that. But just, I always want to make sure there's value, there's reciprocity. So there's a way that me being able to know what people need and provide, that's one thing. But there's another where, oh my God, this person can get me this or that. So I think a lot of where the scarcity mentality goes is looking at people as transactionally rather than as just a mysterious opportunity.
Okay, so the way that you're looking at the next steps is now rooted in things that are against your true nature, right? I'm looking at what can I get from people versus, like you kind of said at the beginning, I want to be a kind of friend to everybody, right? The UPS guy, I can't remember the exact wording, but that's the sentiment, right? So it's like I'm working or I'm looking at the next step, the next person transactionally. So now it's like, I need you. It's not that I want you. And all of my next steps are rooted in the same kind of desperate energy of I need to make this work. Okay.
Exactly. That is the inclination.
Okay. Got it. So to what degree then is that just a story, and to what degree is it something that is like befallen you?
When you say it, what's the it? Which part of that?
The scarcity.
Oh, the scarcity isn't real.
But it seems to be real.
My God, it's
showing
my,
up.
my genes. Like not my blue jeans, but in my G genes. It's in my genes, and I could look. I was told, it's interesting because I made a ton of money in law. I've sold businesses. I just never had to worry about money. And I was told, hey, your bank account, and this was like vertical wisdom, your bank account's going to get a lot smaller before it gets bigger. And I thought, well, I hope that's one prophecy I hope doesn't come true. But it's interesting, and it did. And I think because it enabled me to understand I was living in abundance irrespective of how many zeros were in my bank account. So the truth of that, if you put a gun to my head and said, is scarcity real or is abundance real? I'm going to pull the trigger. If I guess wrong, I'm guessing abundance. So then it's a question of getting everybody on board.
Correct, right? In this instance, getting yourself on board. So what I'm also curious about then is, because you have had all the success in law, right? Like you've sold businesses, you've had a lot of clients, you've sold, etc. So it seems like the financial abundance you're lacking right now in your coaching or mentorship business, you did have in your previous business. Is that correct?
And it came effortlessly. I mean, I worked like hell, but the abundance came effortlessly.
Okay. So give me the distinction that you understand there. So like I work like hell, but the abundance came effortlessly. So what's the distinction? Like, I have an interpretation of that, but what's
Yeah.
what's yours?
Your interpretation is the right one, by the way, just what you feel. It's that I worked like hell because that was my nature, or that was my default. And because I, even sometimes I like to work, and I like to outwork everybody else. I like to out hustle everybody else. I a lot of my ego was wrapped up in that, and I generally did. I outworked when I went to trial. I outworked the other side. I was the one in the law library, going right from the law library to the courtroom at 5 in the morning, and giving my opening statement to an empty jury box because the janitor let me in. So that's that's mine. But what came to me, I didn't care about money. I didn't care. That was part of the good things about being a spiritual guy. I was living like an ascetic. I didn't know what to do with my money. And so I just, so anyway, I knew that it was magic and service and destiny that brought the money. And that the work was somehow just woven into the fabric.
Got it. So in that case, the like outworking, it's like it sounds to me like, okay, you could do the same thing now to grow this business, but it sounds like you don't really want to do that.
Nope.
Not at all. Okay, perfect.
I'm not
So
living.
why did you work that like so much harder than everybody else in the previous businesses?
I mean, without getting too much into personal, one is I surrounded myself with people that expected and admired that. So that was the coin of the realm for my spiritual teachers. Not necessarily, that you just worked and worked and worked. My daughter's named after it. Even though I'm Jewish, I spent time in a Trappist monastery in South Carolina called Mepkin Abbey, and my daughter's actually named after the abbey. And I was telling my stepson that the other day that I heard just I wondered why these guys respected me so much, and I heard someone say that Dave Gold is a hard worker. It was just, that was the value. The monks saw it. My spiritual brothers saw it. My law partner saw it. Everybody saw it. So
So could you say that that need to work that hard, that need for that external almost validation, like the approval of like, yes, I am a hard worker, could you say that that was actually creating from scarcity as well?
exactly, beautifully said. And it's not just that; it's that it gives us the illusion of control.
Got it. So it sounds to me like this initial predicament right now, right, with regards to this business, it's like I've seen what it can look like to force and create from this scarcity, right? Like I have to outwork everybody, otherwise there's not enough there for me to actually win. I have to push hard on everybody else, otherwise like I can't trust that it will be enough to actually make it happen. I've built a business, I've made the money that way. I didn't even ask for money at that time because the only value I actually had was just the outright work. I don't want to repeat those things again. And now, since you're refusing to do what's worked before, seems like there's just like major gap. There's this void of like fear of like, well, what do I do now? How do I make it work that isn't hard? Is that accurate?
Yeah, I mean, again, you're dead on. And I would say, get a little metaphysical on us here, is that after a while, it's like whatever you believe in, angels or God or the universe or who knows what, that after a while it will not allow you to, once you've evolved to a certain point, it won't let you act and succeed contrary to those values.
Yeah.
So to me right now, the universe won't let me. If I 2 or 3 months ago, if I'd have just gone and hustled like I normally did and found 20 clients replaced at 10, that would have been sending me the wrong message. So it's, how do we align? We're always, we're always aligning I'm always aligning with forces I can't see. And that's the surrender piece. That's what I'm being invited into. But yes, the predicament I'm in is I am between, and I'm sure you've experienced and your clients have done it. And now you got to, like we said before, eat your own cooking. Is I'm between models. I'm just between models. And how well do we handle the empty space between models?
Got it. Yeah, I think that's actually a great way to say it, is I'm was operating and I made my life from this scarcity, push, grind, don't even think about the money, like I need to outwork everything and everybody model, to what would my life look like if I let go of the ancestral expectations, if I let go of the fears of control, if I let go of and fully trusted that my ability to love the process and could get the outcome without this push energy and use more of a pull energy, like what would that actually look like?
Exactly. I mean, I tell you, people you work with are really lucky to have you. Seriously, you have a great wisdom and great heart and great insight and a really great ability to put things down. But that's the experiment. That's the experiment that we're running. And meanwhile, I'm a human being. So I'm running this noble experiment at the same time that I'm living the realities of the third dimension. And you can't expect one to free you from the other.
Correct. So
I ran that spiritual bypassing experiment. It doesn't work.
yeah, and I understand why you are where you're at, and why you want to go there. So really, I think it, to me, it just sounds like now the question is having this awareness, knowing that I'm moving into a new model. It's how do I develop the tool set, the skill set to align my 3D avatar with what I know to be true from my kind of spiritual knowings, right? Does that
Yeah,
resonate with
I
you?
think spiritual third and fifth dimensional knowings. And I would say also kind of going back to yours and my core methodology, it's that how do I get out of my own way? How do I make sure that I'm not in my own way and that I'm not working at cross purposes to myself, that I'm not secretly all day trusting it day and all night sneaking down here and, sending out email blasts.
Got it. Yeah. So I think in that case, what it sounds like to me, it's really then how do I think, feel, and act in accordance with the higher truth while not succumbing to the resistance of the past, meaning all of the ways that I would normally put the brakes on these higher truths, the working hard, the pushing, the fear, the control, the old narratives that aren't really there. So it's step one is like, how do I let go of that? But then step two is how do I embody the new aspects? How do I embody the new thoughts? How do I embody the new narratives? And it's more in a 3D thing. Like, this is not about you realizing spiritual truth. This is more about how do I work with, the Dave now to just align with these things.
Yeah, and just to you throw another, let's just roll another variable in there. Is it magical thinking doesn't work either. I mean,
Yeah.
it's magic, but I mean, just saying, oh, I'm going to sit around here, and once again, the UPS guy is going to come in my door. And he's going to say, oh, what are you doing there? Oh, yeah, I want to hire you or whatever. There will be that. So there's a way of how does one maturely trust in that which they don't see and act consistent with that which they don't see. Bring all of your wisdom, all of your business acumen, everything you've learned, and at the same time take a leap into the unknown to see what that looks like.
Right. Well, I mean, I would actually say you don't, like, there is an element of the uncertainty that you have to step into. I agree with you on that. But what I think is actually lacking is the certainty of self that you can make that work.
Bingo. That's it. That's it. And that is a beautiful process. That is the work, that is the opportunity, that is the invitation that life at this point brings people like you and me to, and other people, whatever we are, whether in a place where the money's just flowing or whatever, it doesn't matter. It's just being invited into exactly what you just stated.
Absolutely. So I'm glad that resonates. I'm glad you're kind of seeing the bigger picture, because like I said, sometimes, especially when you know a lot, it's kind of like that is both it's a double-edged sword, right? Like then I get caught up in thinking about everything that I know and how I should be, but then I don't really look at the things that I need to look at, and which is why, mirrors like this often are so valuable. So just to kind of wrap this up, just because I do have a hard stop for this particular episode. And again, we can't dive into all of these aspects in this container. The clarity that you've gotten today, like, does that feel complete for you, or is there still something that's left outstanding for you?
I think, well, it's a really good question. I think what's great is to meet uh, uh, a kindred soul, and not just a kindred soul, but I mean a kindred just in terms of like side by side, an equal. And I don't say that in a hierarchical way, but just to meet a fellow. I think that's, and to hear things articulated back is really helpful. Um, I think what you've opened up here. Well, first of all, there's something I want to say before I forget. I know we're running out of time here, but I want to say that one of the things I realize that I do for people, the people I work with, and you do as well, is that if someone's letting go, it's good to have somebody in the background saying, "Hey, don't let go of that." You know, it's like I'm giving you the freedom to run the experiment, but I'm going to keep you in line when you're, when you decide you're just going to go buy lottery tickets with the milk money, right? So I think that's one of the services that you provide by being able to hold that space where people can go and let go. So I think that's great, and I think that's part of what you've done for me here is just giving me, to know to help me hold that space. And yeah, I don't know. I think a lot of what came out of my mouth was brought out by you. It was just kind of like, oh, it sounds like, oh, these are my ideas, but they're just, oh, the fact that I'm between models, that's really interesting. That kind of that gives you a you are here, even though you don't know where the here is.
Correct. Well, I mean, I would say that, with whatever people I speak to or even clients I work with, it's hard to see the building when you're standing on the balcony, right? And you need to see the building to see where all the pieces fit together. And again, that's kind of that's why I always say, like, coaches need coaches as well. And this is a perfect example of it. So I thank you for, having the courage to kind of come up in this way, because I know it's not for everybody. So then just to close it off, like, what are your biggest takeaways from our conversation today?
That I'm not nuts. That's one. That have to find another intelligent, someone else just kind of mirror a lot of this stuff. Um, that that the old model got me to here, but it's not going to take me to the next. It confirms that it's not going to take me to the next area, and that I think what I felt too talking is that I need that it's really eating my own cooking, and that the more that me being authentically aligned with what I know to be true is what's going to expedite this process and and get me. And I love to check back with you in whatever many months it is and show you how this experiment has turned out because it's already starting to, the dam is already, the little Dutch boy's taking his finger out of the dike and it's already starting to come. So
Love it. Well, definitely my pleasure to be able to provide it for you. So, thank you for coming on and having the courage to do this publicly. And then just to kind of close it off, let everybody know, where they can find you, who's the best people to find you. Floor is yours for that.
yeah, so the best thing is, davegold.com is the easiest way to find me, or you can email me at dave@davegold.com. And I would say, you and I were kind of, it's the same type of thing. I would say that if you have the courage to be seen, to be truly seen, and to no longer live small, and to just run the experiment of how trustworthy life can be, and to suspend your disbelief long enough to let life prove itself to you, and that there's really something running through. And I know we're running out of time here, so I'm just trying to. I'm being inspired, but I'm trying to be, trying to be concise at the same time. There's a movement right now in consciousness or in whatever it is that which is inauthentic cannot survive. I think COVID stripped away a lot of stuff's happening this year. I felt it with the solstice, and if you're at the time of your life right now where you just can't live with your own bullshit anymore, and it's not just about you feeling good, but it's getting in the way of you loving more and impacting more, then those are the kind of people that you and I both love to work with, and you see energetically it's a good fit. So thank you for giving me the chance to do that. Thank you for providing a forum. Thank you for doing what you're doing in the world and for all the people whose lives you're transforming too.
Thank you very much. It was definitely my pleasure. So yeah, we'll put all of that stuff in the show notes. And yeah, for everybody else, we'll see you on the next one.
Well played.